Yikes. What's all this about then?
Bom dia, Portugal!
In Portugal, there's a YouTube show full of fun facts you need to know. Carl rings the bell and the members show to the GMP morning show. Featured guests will come and they will blow your mind. The audience will do so in kind. A little vanity mixed with some insanity on the morning show with GMP.
Good morning, Portugal, and I'd like to welcome you to another fantastic day.
Hey, you gumpers.
The Alegria Munson here with the Good Morning Portugal show, live stream and podcast, sounding remarkably chipper. But I've got to say to you, I have been burning the candle at both ends, and it feels like I've been burning it in the middle a little bit as well. I had a wonderful invitation yesterday. Well, how are you? Let me know how you're doing in the chat. That's more important. But I just want to give you a bit of background. Yesterday, we had a lovely invitation to go see Spider-Man, the movie. Now, sometimes here in Portugal, movies start at 10 o'clock in the evening, so you're not out of the cinema until midnight, and you're wondering, as it gets closer to midnight, you're thinking, will I be able to get my car out of the car park? Fortunately, we were, and met up with some lovely friends. The other Carl, who you'll have seen from time to time on the screen here. Our lads are good friends, and they wanted to see the Spider-Man movie, and the dads enjoyed it as well. What an incredible film that is. Amazing animation. The new Spider-Man Miles Morales story, and incredible, truly incredible. Nearly got two films for the price of one. We arranged to meet, had quite a tight schedule, and arranged to meet our friends in the cinema. And have you been to the cinema recently? Have you been to the cinema in Portugal? The trailers seem quite long, don't they? So we saw a trailer for the new Transformers movie, which seemed to go on for half an hour. And then I'm thinking, okay, this is interesting. This is how they do it now. This is how they advertise new movies. They play you a really long trailer, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. And I'm thinking, this is a very, very long trailer. Turns out we were sent into the wrong cinema. So we were watching a different film. I saw the beginning. I don't even know what film it was that I saw the beginning of. But then our friends appeared and said, "You're in the wrong cinema, quick." And we went and sat through the extravaganza, which is the new Spider-Man movie. Incredible. And then back here home and sat up talking till 2 a.m. So a little bit floppy this morning. We had a great evening, great movie. Thoroughly recommend it. Whether or not I'm not a massive superhero sort of franchise movie person, but it's really quite incredible. The animation and the styling and so on. You can't stop for a breath. I think it's 1 hour 40. Films are very long these days as well, aren't they? You certainly got a lot of value. What we're seeing another bit of another film as well at the beginning. Funny times, learning all the time here in Portugal. With the shock news this morning, according to the Portuguese themselves, Portugal Day survey, profoundly profoundly dissatisfied country. They were able to say it, and some pretty shocking findings from that I suspect we'll talk about with James the Slug Holley, who's already with us in the chat if you want to talk to him now or when he's on screen. And we'll have our friend Anna joining us from Belgium, who loves being in Portugal and treats others to her Portuguese immersion experience, which she'll talk about when she joins us. Before that, we have we have one or two people from Ensemble Iberica. Really delighted that Andy Klein was able to help us with this. Thank you so much, Andy. It's Ensemble Iberica performs music from Iberia, and it's not often, is it, we get anything other than the Iberian FM phone-in referencing Iberia like that. So on their website, ensembleiberica.org, performing music from Iberia, Spain and Portugal, and other areas of the world connected to the Iberian diaspora, while educating the public about Iberian cultural influence. So really looking forward to talking to them. They're on a bit of a tour of Portugal at the moment. And then at 10 o'clock this morning, as we go into the Iberian. So we've got an Iberian sandwich. You've got an Ensemble Iberico from around 1:45 this morning. And then after 10, on the Iberian FM phone-in. I know Brazil's not in the Iberian Peninsula, but it will be our Iberian FM phone-in subject, Deconstructing Brazil. Do you remember Simone Torres Costa? She joined us a couple of months ago on the Monday morning slot with James, talking about her workshop about moving to, or helping people move to Portugal, which she's done from Brazil. And she's also the author of Beyond Carnival, Soccer and Girls in Small Bikinis. That got your attention, didn't it, some of you? Deconstructing Brazil, then, is her book, Beyond Carnival, Soccer and Girls in Small Bikinis. And of course, part of our effort to broaden the scope of the Good Morning Portugal show to include people from other countries other than mainly America and UK and Sweden, of course. Who's in this morning? What countries? Let's have a look at how we're represented this morning. Can you shout out for your country of origin this morning? So definitely got Americans and Brits and a Swede here, maybe an Icelander as well, and possibly a Canadian this morning. But delighted to be able to talk to Simone at 10 this morning too. So video incoming from the aforementioned Swede and the Lord Gilchrist as well, who sent in a bit of video. Let's catch up and see what you're up to this weekend. Thank you so much for the video that you sent in. Here's a quickie then from Lord Gilchrist, who's in the Algarve. Loving that, Andrew. Thank you very much, Lord Gilchrist. Up early, I think, in the Algarve there. And you also sent in this still picture of where are you? Is this is that Tavira? I wonder. Let us know which bit of the Algarve that is. Staying in the Algarve then with Anna. This was taken a couple of days ago before the storm. Is it Oscar? Hit parts of Portugal. So relatively calm. The water slightly choppy. And then some lovely video from you from the weekend. Anna, thank you so much for this. Really appreciate it as well. Aren't they amazing? Hold on a minute. Let me just move that still picture out the way. Not completely with it. As I said, burning the candle at both ends and a little bit floppy in the middle of the candle as well. But superb. There's a lovely view of the Algarve for you. And we've got other shenanigans to report on from around the country. Oh, there we go. That's better, isn't it? Those kids are amazing, aren't they? Sorry if that was a little bit loud this morning, but they're incredible. If our friends who are joining us from Ensemble Iberica see those kids, they might want to sign them up and take him on tour. And I noticed part of one of the performance venues for Ensemble Iberica is Carnegie Hall, which for the likes of a Brit like me is just a place you hear about in the movies. So Ensemble Iberica perform the Carnegie Hall, as well as I think around the Iberian Peninsula as well. Fabulous. Let's see what else. Oh, they're just joining us in the background. Fantastic. That'll be Erin and Bo joining us from Ensemble Iberica. I feel like I must play that video again to see if they want to sign up these kids and take them on tour around America. Let me just play a little bit of this lovely video for you, Ensemble Iberica, who are joining us in the background. We'll see you in a few minutes, but check this out. Goodness, aren't they sweet? Fantastic. I'm spinning each other around like that. You may also like this morning our Quem Sabia as well, which is beautifully connected to, I think, what we'll be talking about with Ensemble Iberica as well. So just a few minutes away, they'll be joining us. Looking forward to talking to you and hanging out some more, finding out what we've been up to at the weekend. Yes, what else have you been up to at the weekend? We haven't even said any hellos yet. Already nearly 20 minutes to 9. Here's Philomena, who, of course, joined us last Friday. Philomena, what are you doing there? She apparently is eating cherries dipped in chocolate. She was, they're called, at Tasca do Levezinho. Must be a special, a house special there, Especial de Casa. Some cherries dipped in chocolate. They look kind of swollen, like they're dipped in alcohol as well to me. Or they're great big Fundão cherries, where all the action was in Fundão, of course, in cherry season. Sticking with booze, how about this? This is Guldendrach, found up in Ponte Lima, I think, by João de Norte. A mere 10.5% alcohol on these bottles here of dark brew called Guldendrach. It looks like something from Scandinavia. How are you feeling? How's your head this morning? I think we've caught up this morning. Lovely picture from Dougie, Douglas Hughes, UK-based writer producing general interest articles ranging from travel pieces to classic motoring. And that's Dougie's new profile pic in the Portugal News, where, of course, he is a regular writer. And I think a new piece out this morning. We'll be looking at the Portugal resident for our shock story this morning that we'll talk about with Anna and with James this morning. Portugal Day poll shows profoundly dissatisfied country. What a shame, because it's not our experience here. I'm sure Ensemble Iberica will be having a fine time. We'll be quite shocked by those findings as well. Let's say a few quick hellos then before they join us. T-Duck was in early with the Bon Dia Alegria Gumpers. Oh, and with those pictures of the Algarve, I need to say hello to and happy birthday to Edmundo Viegas as well. He is our wonderful transfer guy. Edmundo in the taxi. Back in the day, a couple of years ago, we used to talk to him in his taxi. He used to pop onto the show from time to time. So Edmundo, have a great birthday. Parabéns a você. Deep thought of the day then. One of the deep secrets of life is that all that is really worth the doing is what we do for others. That's nice, isn't it? And that would be Lewis Carroll. I nearly said C.S. Lewis. Lewis Carroll. Charles Ludwig Dodgson, better known by his pen name Lewis Carroll. And I think also known for recreational drug use, which inspired the books, was an English author, poet, and mathematician. And let's go here. Let's go here this morning. Quem Sabia then this morning. Cavaquinho is a small Portuguese string instrument in the European guitar family. How about that? With 4 wires or gut strings, I guess in its traditional form would be gut. A cavaquinho player is called a cavaquista. I'm sure this is part of the Fado repertoire or lineup. We'll find out if it is or not from Ensemble Iberica, our new friends joining us in just a moment. Different forms of cavaquinho have evolved in different regions, and I'll put the pic of it on the screen as well so you can see what we're talking about here. Varieties used outside of Iberia are found in Brazil, where we go, of course, at 10 o'clock this morning, talking to Simone and her book about Brazil, her native Brazil, Cape Verde and Madeira. And then finally on this subject, loads more comments have come in and have helped me lose my place. Here we go. The Caribbean cuatro, which is popular in Puerto Rico, and the Hawaiian ukulele were both derived and adapted from the Portuguese cavaquinho. I had no idea. Portugal's influence around the world continues with this wonderful Quem Sabia this morning and the wonderful inventions from Portugal that we found out about beginning last week and continuing into this week as well. Let's give them a nice big round of applause because they're about to join us now onto the screen. That was a really nice entry for you. Bo and Erin, sorry, you're hidden behind a cockerel there, Erin. Let me just move over. We can't have that happening in this morning. Bo, Erin, how are you? Good to see you this morning.
Very good. Thanks for having us on the show.
Bon dia.
It's an absolute pleasure. Bon dia to you as well, Bo. So what's going on? Tell us about Ensemble Iberica. You're in the country, right?
Yes, we're in Porto right now, having a wonderful time. We've got a group of patrons with us. So Bo can tell you a little bit more about how this whole project started, but we are currently in Porto with a group of music lovers that we've brought over from the United States, and we bring them to Portugal to experience some of the fado music and your wonderful wine and food and just enjoy the culture.
I love it. You made it sound like it's my wonderful wine. I'll take that.
Isn't that
Brilliant.
what? Wait, aren't you paying us in wine? Wasn't that the deal?
Yes. So, my people will talk to your people about that. I'd be delighted to, because it's quite good value as well, isn't it? Of course, the Portuguese wine. Well, I'm so pleased you're having a great time. Lovely to see an organization that celebrates the Iberian connection, which I don't think is that common, is it? It's like Spain or Portugal, and maybe a little bit of Andorra sometimes, and that tiny bit of France too. But how is it then that you have this organization that uses the Iberian tag? That's one for you, is it, Bo?
Yes. So this project started about 12 years ago. I came over here with two other musicians, a jazz singer and a jazz guitarist, and we were awarded a grant through the Linda Leighton Foundation, and we stayed in residency in Alfama in Lisboa for 2 months just to learn how to play fado.
Wow.
And it was absolutely the adventure of a lifetime.
Yeah.
And when we came back, we decided to incorporate the ensemble as a 501c3 and make it a bigger umbrella of Spanish music, Portuguese music, and really all of the whole diaspora, all of their former colonies. It's not time specific, but we do at least once a season present fado music or something with a Luso connection.
Love it. Iberian Luso connection. And this particular tour then, and these lucky patrons of it's a charity basically is your structure, right? People can be part of this and support what you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Yeah.
absolutely. We are 501c3, and that's a U.S. term for a charitable, not-for-profit. So,
Yeah.
in addition to the concert series that we present, we also have an educational arm, and we also do a lot of charitable work. So,
That's fantastic. So, and that means that the patrons can occasionally get to basically tour with you and really, because it's not every charity that you give to, you can't always get this level of experience, can you? I mean, there's what are they experiencing? What are they doing with you at the moment?
yeah. Well, we had a wonderful time in Lisboa, so we saw many fado shows and, of course, ate a lot of great food. And now here in Porto, we went to the Douro River Valley yesterday, and I got to experience that. And then tonight we saw, oh, well, actually, was it 2 nights ago? We saw the fado concerts of some new fado voices from Porto, which was terrific. And then tonight we're having another fado concert.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And you getting to play as well, Bo, on this tour?
Oh, yes. And it's a great chance for people that are our patrons to meet some of our artists as co-hosts.
Yeah.
So our principal co-host this trip, and usually every year, is Rodrigo Costa Felix, and he's one of the greatest singers of his generation. But
Wow.
he introduced us to some new up-and-coming singers in their early 20s, and this has totally rewritten the trip. So
Yeah.
we also meet artists and bring. He's coming to Kansas City for sure.
Oh,
So
wonderful.
there's that's really the best thing about these is access to the artists, having cultural context and seeing where they live, where they work, and how they make music. We think it's a very informative process for the aficionados and the listeners and our donors.
That is truly amazing. Sorry, go on, Erin.
It's more like, I like to think of it like a community. Like we're building a community of people that have interest in this music, and it just enriches the whole experience to be able to see it contextually.
Yeah, absolutely. And this music, this region, can you tell me a little bit more about how you see that? Because my understanding is that, the Iberian Peninsula is mainly Portugal and Spain. And of course, there is that part of Andorra and a little bit of France as well. But you also have a connection with Turkey, don't you? And possibly other countries as well. How is Iberia working for you as a concept? And what can you tell us about that?
Well, probably around the pandemic times, and we also have a new cellist that is Turkish. Definitely, what I would call mission drift started occurring, and that umbrella just wasn't big enough,
Right.
So we have been studying the connection of Galicia and Ireland for a long time. It's a very obvious musical sound, and pulling at that thread. So we have been doing research and patron trips to Ireland recently, and we'll most likely be in Galicia for some research in October. But
Wonderful.
yeah, Turkey on the other side of the Mediterranean. But we've been presenting a lot of Turkish music these last couple of years, mainly because of our cellist Ezgi.
Okay. Yeah.
And speaking of Ireland, we are doing another patron trip to Ireland in April of 2024, and we've just opened that up. So if people are interested in perhaps joining us, we went to Ireland for the first time this year, and it was absolutely incredible. And we'll be back again next spring. So if people are interested, they could check the website and come with us.
That's
It's
really
a lot of fun.
unfair. That's really unfair. And to say we're going to Ireland, would anyone like to join us? Well, yes, of course. There's how to get involved. ensembleiberica.org. I want to talk to you more about this musical connection, though, because Turkey's come into the picture now. You're going to Spain, you're going to Ireland, and there's just something so powerful about this kind of music, isn't there, that tells us stories of the past and is so full of yearning. And how is it that how are the traditional Fado representatives here responding to your passion for the music? They must be quite flattered and delighted that as far away as America, people are celebrating this kind of music.
Well, when we first came 12 years ago, I had assumed that there would be other foreigners learning Fado.
Right.
And we ended up being sort of having the power of first. So lots of people wanted to meet us. We were wined and dined by politicians and people in the arts community. And we met a lot of great people very, very quickly. We were on the cover of the Noticias magazine and made many TV appearances. It was just very unusual.
Yeah.
So we got a lot of gas out of that for a few years.
That's superb.
But yeah, it's
I would
very
be surprised as well. You would think there is a celebration of Fado all over the world, but that was a really pleasant surprise, and as you say, turbocharged your experience of being here those years ago.
Yeah, when you go to Spain to study flamenco, there's other foreigners doing it, or tango in Argentina, and this was just something very unusual. And they didn't really have anything in place to learn. You just have to learn it in the Fado houses. It's an oral tradition, and there's no one that you can just go up to and get, I need Portuguese guitar lessons. It's something. We quickly found out it was just something you had to learn by rote in its context.
Right. It's like some of the Indian music traditions. You can't just get a book. You have to go and be with the masters of the music and get to grips with it and learn your stuff.
Oh yeah, and so much of it is the Fado house. It's the context of where it's supposed to be performed.
Okay, so on that note, pardon the pun, could you give us a little bit of help there for people who are thinking, I think I like it. I definitely know I would like to try. Going to a Fado house, is it as easy as that? Do you just look it up in your kind of Time Out magazine of your local Portuguese town and pop along there? What would be your beginner's guide to Fado music or Iberian music?
Well, people write me with this question often,
Yeah.
and I just give them a short list of my very favorite Fado houses where I learned. Of course, I have very strong biases in my taste and what I like.
Yes.
But
he has excellent taste, by the way.
I'm sure.
I would say, first of all, they need to know the etiquette of the Fado house.
Oh, go on. What's that? What is that?
It's a wonderful way of performing music. I absolutely love it. Any good Fado houses, the lights come down to where you can barely see. Yeah. And that's your cue for everyone to be absolutely quiet. I mean, not a whisper. Anything. And they're always playing acoustically. There's no amplification. Oftentimes it's right in front of the front door, so no one can really come in.
The door shuts.
Yeah, door shuts.
That's quite a moment, isn't it?
Yeah.
You hear the door locking. Right?
So, there's usually 4 to 5 Fados performed. And, everyone can behave themselves for 20 minutes, right?
Well, I don't know about this community, quite frankly. We'll give it a go. So that's important then. You don't want to be sort of chatting and getting your phone out with the flash on and taking pictures and trying to sing along.
Well, there are some songs that are meant to be sung along with.
Right.
And they always welcome video cameras, just no flash.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then it's over, and you're completely free to party and talk for 20, 30 minutes. Then the lights will go down, and this will happen till 3 a.m. or as long as
Wow.
people are in the Fado house.
And usually there's one person who is sort of the designated a person for that evening. So maybe Rodrigo may be singing two or three sets. And then you may have other people come in. Every night is different. That's what I love about it, is the discovery of it. So you might say, well, Rodrigo is singing tonight at Mesa. But then you don't know who else might show up. There might be a master who shows up. There might be a young singer. There might be a grandmother from the neighborhood who comes in and sings a song. You just never know. It's a wonderful thing. And I love that the music is sung by and belongs to the community. I really like that.
Yeah. And it's truly live then in every sense, live performance, but live as in alive in the community. And you're like in many folk traditions, I suppose, you're not going to, like you say, not going to know who's going to turn up and how the evening is going to go. And there's an electricity about that as well, isn't there? This looks like it's changed both your lives, getting involved in Iberian music. Certainly yours, Bo, from those, was it 14, 15 years ago when you first came and this plot twist occurred for you musically. How does it go down then? I mean, for me, Carnegie Hall sounds like the most incredible venue to play in. It's just from when you're an English kid, it's like what you hear in the movies or even superhero movies. I went to see Spider-Man last night. Carnegie Hall, you hear it as an iconic performance venue. You are going to great stages. How is the music received in North America?
Well, we did play some music by Carlos Paredes in Carnegie Hall, and I played the Portuguese guitar in that hall. And I don't know if that's a first, but we represented his music as serious chamber music, and we made it guitar, cello, Portuguese guitar arrangements of them. So it's something that we're presenting in different contexts rather than just the Fado houses.
The Carnegie Hall concert was absolutely astonishing. It was really a highlight. It was one of the best concerts I've ever seen, and I'm so proud of the whole ensemble. We brought how many folks from Kansas City? I think six. Yeah, 6 musicians from Kansas City, plus musicians from New York and California, and performers. Mexico. Yeah, it was really an incredible experience to see this traditional music presented at such a high level, and it was a sold-out performance, and people were literally cheering at the end. So it was really quite. It's been a heck of a 3 weeks. We went right from Carnegie Hall to Turkey to Portugal. So
incredible, and so good timing with our Quem Sabia today. We're looking at Portuguese inventions and how this Portuguese guitar. This is the smaller, I think, isn't it, of the Portuguese guitars, but how that bow has made its presence felt around the world, inspiring the Hawaiian ukulele by the sound of it.
Yeah, it's a long and interesting evolution. Some people say it's the machete from Madeira. There's a lot of these instruments that are small and ukulele-like that are Portuguese, that are from different regions.
Wow.
Everyone's claiming it.
Yeah. Well, they would.
But I guess the story goes in the late 1800s, there were a few Portuguese men that were cabinet makers that brought some of these instruments with them and founded that tradition in Hawaii.
Amazing.
But it's an incredible story. We actually, one of our patrons was a Polynesian man from Hawaii named Moses, and we took him to a store in Oporto that specializes in cavaquinhos and spent the whole afternoon there. And it was, this is his life. And it was really illuminating for him to just get his hands on everything that points to that instrument for real, to play them, tune them up, try them out.
Beautiful. That sent a little chill down my spine. That's so wonderful. T-Duck, who brought us that Quem Sabia this morning, talking to us about the Cavaquinhos Day. I love Carlos Paredes, listening to him right now. See, they say men can't multitask, but T-Duck is watching the show, enjoying what you're saying, and he's got some Carlos Paredes going on in the background as well. Thank you so much for being here. I must make sure that people know exactly where to find you at ensembleiberica.org. And that's how they can stay in touch, presumably subscribe to a newsletter, maybe get involved with you as a charity to support the work that you're doing. Are the performances that are going on this particular tour, are they patron only? Can people come and meet you, or are they open to the public at the moment?
Nope.
Yeah, sorry. we've got a private concert, and that's part of what's so great about these patron trips is that we curate experiences that are really designed for our patrons and unique, one of a kind concerts. So we're going to have one tonight that's been curated for us, and a private concert and a dinner. But if you'd like to join us, you can go on our website, and there's a thing that says patron trips, and it's a little drop down box, and you'll see. You just keep watching those. We will populate those. The one that's up right now is for Ireland in the spring. And we'd love to have some people come join us and talk about that, how that, thread leads back. It's very interesting.
Please, whenever you're back in Europe, do get in touch and to join us on. It's nice and easy doing this, isn't it? And so please do that when you're back in Europe, or even from the States, of course. And we have to thank our mutual friend Andy Klein for making this happen as well. So good morning to you, Andy, who I think is enjoying touring with you and is in Porto at the moment. So enjoy the rest of your tour. Thank you so much for getting up early. I know for musicians, this is not an easy gig, is it? First thing in the morning. So Bo, especially, thank you very much.
There was some groaning, yes.
We made it though. We did it. Thank you so much for having us on the show. It's delightful to meet you.
And you, igualmente. And enjoy the rest of your tour, and I look forward to speaking to you again soon. Take care. Bye for now. Have a good one.
Next time.
Amazing. Oh, there they go. So Bo and Erin there of Ensemble Iberica. And we've made James a little bit late, but I'm sure he won't mind because I think he'll have enjoyed that. But we can't say hello to him, of course, until we've played his music. There's a little bit of guitar going on in this, isn't there? And his wonderful intro tune. We'll see him right after this.
Bom dia!
How are you, mate?
Muito bem, obrigado. E tu?
Oh, muito bem. Pouco cansada hoje, meu amigo. I don't know what burning. There must be a really good Portuguese saying for burning the candle at both ends, because it's what they do.
Well, you've made a couple of references, both of burning in the middle and melting in the middle, and I just said, okay, let it go.
Enough already. Very good.
It's not good when you're burning in the middle.
No, it's not. Well, it was the imagery to me that made sense of a slightly floppy candle.
Yeah.
Imagine they have to make candles to a different standard here in Portugal. Because if you leave them on the windowsill or on the fireplace, they do go floppy, don't they? Anyway, enough of my floppiness. I don't think that's an area of counselling you necessarily enter into. or
Not often, no.
Okay, let's back up the truck and get out of this cul-de-sac quick.
Beep. Okay.
It was lovely, wasn't it, to meet Bo and Erin? Isn't it a fantastic thing they're doing?
Yes, absolutely. I was actually surprised to hear American accents. Somehow I thought I'd hear something else. I don't know what, but so.
Well,
because I'd never heard of Fado before I started exploring Portugal, so that's all relatively new. And
well, they're flying a flag. They're flying a flag, aren't they? Simone has joined us already. She's with us at 10. Simone, can you give me a thumbs up to confirm you're joining us at 10? and that you're just backstage with us as for part of the fun. Although we might bring you on a little bit earlier as well, if that's all right with you. Thumbs up or any of that, or communicate with us in the private chat, because we had such a lovely conversation with James last time you were on. You might like to join us a little bit earlier as well. Algarve Laura Puntin is here, as is Lord Gilchrist, whose video we showed earlier on, saying hi everyone, and Laura P. So Laura, is that both? Is that two different Lauras or the same one with different sign-ins there? Hi all from lovely Braga, northeast of Porto. We'll be going to Braga in May of next year for one of our Discovery weekends, Laura. Maybe you want to help co-host that. Northeast of Porto. Oh, here until the end of June. Okay, so maybe not then. More or less than back home in the Algarve. That's a nice life, split between Braga and the Algarve. Great to see you here this morning. So how are you, James? What name are you using this week?
Same as last.
Oh, I see.
I love watching you struggle with the da 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 da.
You do that. I think you love seeing me struggle, period. As you
Yeah, that's true.
Part of the sport.
I was talking with Conk and Hanny last night, and made the comment that one of my favorite parts of being on is when I can say something that causes you to just absolutely lose it.
Oh yeah,
because she loves that too. So
you and the flies in the studio.
Yes,
God,
and I have to say, I thought of you. I don't know whether the AI in Facebook advertising has gotten so superior that it can actually read your thoughts, but
probably.
But I saw an ad for a salt gun that is designed for shooting flies. It shoots dry salt at them and apparently can get them from a distance because it's like buckshot, but it's salt and it's an air gun. So it is, you walk through your house, pop, and just nail them with air pressured salt.
Season your food at the same time.
I guess, yes. But I just had a vision of you rather than the electric racket with you and Louisa in the studio just popping each other with salt guns.
Well, yeah, I mean, that sounds really dangerous. That needs to come with goggles. However, I can also see an application for it in an Italian restaurant. You know, sometimes when you say
careful for fresh ground salt.
Yeah, but it's an arsenal of seasoning weapons. You know, you say to the Italian waiter, "May I have a little bit of freshly ground black pepper?" And then two guys come out. One of them's got the great big grinder mounted on his shoulder. They kind of twisting, aren't they? And there seemed to be a period in the 70s or 80s where the bigger the grinder, the better. It was all part of the.
It was very impressive, yes.
Yes, and now they can complement that with a salt gun to fire across your table as well. That sounds terrible.
Well, and it's called a salt gun, right? A salt gun.
Oh dear, right, okay, yeah. and well, João Denort is combing the internet already trying to buy one. You might have to find the link for us, James. Now that sounds like a fun way to get those pesky flies. And
got on Amazon and just put in salt gun, you'd find whatever you're looking for.
Yes. Well, I was also sent a video, which I'll play you now. Another way of dispatching the fly for many people. And I think Bruce Joffe said something about this as well, about how good Russ is with, what do you call them in America? Elastic bands? Because a rubber band would be probably something different, would it?
Rubber is what we call them. Rubbers. Band.
A rubber band.
As opposed to putting on shoes to keep your feet from getting wet, or another.
Yes.
Another use of the word. Yes.
Right. Okay. Well, here's a rubber being pinged across the kitchen. Take that as you will. This is Johnny Cocktail. The kitchen.
We do call them rubber band. Rubber band. Unless you're talking about the material, you know, the chemical structure of rubber, like a rubber tree. If you say rubber in the United States, chances are people are going to go to condoms.
Okay, and whoops, there goes another rubber tree plant. Where was that? What movie is that from? I don't know. But this is Johnny Cocktail with his use of the chemical compound or something. That was good, wasn't it? Let's just that one more time. Replay.
Nailed that sucker.
Wow. Okay. How did we get to this, James? You're here to talk about the serious matter of mindful migration. And here we are just larking about talking about killing flies. It's very immature.
Yes, well, my oldest son, I quote him often on this one, once said to me, in the midst of some conversation where I was spouting some trivia I knew, or some trivia that he remembered that I knew, and he just said, "Geez, Dad, you know a little bit about a whole lot of shit."
Put that on your CV.
And so, yes, exactly. Anyway, yes. What I learned about flies in terms of trying to smack them that can be helpful is apparently they always take off directly from whatever surface they're on, straight up before they dodge off. So if you can get right on top of them, they can't get away. But you got to be quick.
Right. Okay. We are. This has captured the imagination of the jumpers because we are now being sent images of the assault rifle fly gun as well. Oh my goodness. I had no idea because there is a serious. There is a serious matter in the air here, and I think we'll get Simone on in just a few minutes to talk about this. But was it a shock to you when I sent you that, or the title of today's show, Portugal, Profoundly Dissatisfied Country, and this new poll, James? Does it align with what you were going to be talking about this morning?
It was not aligned at all what I was planning on talking about, but it gave me a whole new idea. I'm always in the moment. So what my focus would be after, there's a couple things I want to share that are just not related to kind of not really old business. But
okay, go on. Yeah, go ahead.
Came up last week. But then my decision was, okay, I'm going to talk about a mindful approach to surveys because that's important. So anyway, true. I mentioned that a week or two I did a staycation in Ericeira. And I really wanted to give a shout out to the hotel where I stayed. I found out about this hotel when Aviva came to visit in Ericeira. It's called the Villa Ana Margarita. They have two hotels. This is the one that is in the actual Villa Center. They have a beach one that's a little farther north on the beach, but it's an excellent little I think they call them boutiques as opposed to hotels. They only have like 5 or 6 rooms, but the staff is very friendly, knowledgeable, multilingual, at least in English and Portuguese, willing to engage in conversations with their guests if they're not busy. It's just a really, really positive experience, and I just felt they deserved to be shouted out. And what I discovered is that the pricing, at least for a single, is competitive with virtually every Airbnb that's available in the area. So it's not even super expensive at this particular hotel. So I wanted to make sure and mention them. Villa, although they spelled it with 2 L's, so it's looking more like Spanish or English, but Ana Margarita. And then the other thing from last week is I mentioned that I had a video that just really warmed my heart of our Nunu Mensch and his wife Elena at the Communities Unite event. So you get a chance to kind of see the Communities Unite event, and you get to see this video. I just really wanted to share it, but I wanted to make sure that Nunu was okay with that. And he said that it was fine. I could go ahead and share it. So why don't I just do that now? I think I just click on it and we'll just come up on the screen.
Please, fantastic.
Okay, let's see.
Well, this is the first for us, isn't it? This go with the technology here. Give it a go, James. Let's see what happens.
Well, I'm trying to click on it and it's not doing anything. It loaded apparently onto this. Oh, there it goes.
Maybe. Oh my word! I was tempted at the beginning of that, James. But given that you'd recommended a hotel, I was tempted to shout, "Get a room!" And then, but the tenderness of that then sort of came upon me. I mean, what a beautiful! I presume that's why you shared it. The tenderness between those two is absolutely lovely. There's a man you want to buy insurance from, right?
And become best friends with. Yes, it's pretty amazing what can happen in Portugal. Yeah, as Nuno says, he doesn't sell insurance. He just helps people get what they want and becomes friends. So it's pretty amazing. Anyway, yeah, every time I've seen it, because I edited it as well.
Unguarded, candid moment.
Yes, and it's the only picture or video that I took the whole day. I just saw them dancing out there. Nuno had already expressed to me how reluctant he tends to be around dancing, and told me that Elena loves it. So when the song came on, he just felt compelled and invited her to join him out there. She was surprised, and this is what happened. You know, they just started dancing, and I just saw the love and the affection and the tenderness. It just warms my heart every time. It just makes my heart smile. So I really wanted to share that. A member of the community, a strong supporter, and just a beautiful, actually, they're both friends now. So I wanted to make sure I had a chance to share that experience. On top of that, I had this movie moment where I was watching all these, what is it the British say, people of a certain age, out on the dance floor or out dancing to this tribute to Elvis, which wasn't all Elvis, but early 60s rock mostly. And they were just all dancing out there. And all of a sudden it went into slow motion. They all turned into teenagers at their high school dance. It was like transformative. I mean, literally in my view, I just went, oh my goodness. So whatever judgments I was having, whatever opinions I was having, whatever reaction I was having to people my age out on the dance floor having fun, it just turned into this really compassionate, loving moment of these high school age kids just enjoying their school dance. It was pretty amazing experience. Yeah, it was pretty amazing.
You're going to get me going in a minute. But absolutely right. And isn't it lovely when you are of a certain age, you know that your parents aren't waiting outside and the lights aren't going to be turned on at any minute to break it all up. So isn't that fun? So there they were, being all loving and everything in broad daylight.
Yeah, and I think that you get to a level where you just don't care what other people think, which is so different than when you're, an adolescent in high school age. So you're just out there being fully expressed, moving however you want to move, and just smiling and relishing the moment and the music and the movement. And it was pretty amazing to experience those two moments.
Communities unite then. I mean, lots of wonderful things going on there. The love for Nuno continues in the chat here, but Communities Unite are doing something amazing. You talked a little bit about them last week, and they will continue. And Nuno Insurance are supporting their events, which is a way of bringing the local community together of expats and foreigners and immigrants together with Portuguese local people, using food and music. What better way to bring people together than with food and music? And clearly, I mean, there was the sense of togetherness you've spoken of there was apparent and abundant. So Andrew's saying both lovely childhood sweethearts too. That's Nuno and Elena. Nuno is just such a fabulous guy, says Pete. Beautiful. Jim enjoyed that up there in Porto. Good morning to you, Jim. And look at this. It's so lovely. And this one from Bob.
Isn't he lovely? Oh, sorry.
Maybe they'll do that next time. And you can get on stage and sing it. It looks like Jack Nicholson to us. Well, I hadn't thought of that. Jack Nicholson. Well, no, me neither. Very different characters as well.
Yes.
Has to be said as well. They're both very hardworking. I remember my daughters saying to me once, Dad, even Jack Nicholson has a day off, which Nuno doesn't really, does he? So they are both very hardworking. There is definitely a similarity.
And he's very dedicated to being able to retire soon. So he's all in like 100%, and still supporting community events. That's one thing some people may not know about him, is if you say anything that is asking for service, he's first in line. He's like, yeah, what can I do? What can I do? It's amazing.
Brilliant. Now Jack does some caring roles. As as good as it gets, and those funny roles too, not just the Shining.
His stereotypes, yeah.
Yes.
The
Right.
whole "here's Johnny's" what everybody comes up with when they think of Jack Nicholson, just a crazy guy breaking through a wall. It's like, ooh, frightening.
Well, now, are you aware of what's going on here? We've got something. Excuse me. We've got something going on in the chat now. Is Mrs. G not well? Okay, got to run now. We have stuff to do. Have a great day, everyone. Whoever that is, I missed the beginning of this discussion about using the medical system. So love and best wishes to whoever that is. We'll come back to that. We're a little bit all over the place this morning, as I said, burning the candle from every possible angle, and wanting to talk about this poll and survey, which I think you're going to take to task in some way. I think we should bring Simone on as well to talk about this too, because I think she might have something to add to this. So let's give her a nice big round of applause as well. Simone, good morning and welcome back to the Good Morning Portugal show. How are you?
Good morning. Thank you for inviting me back. I'm very excited to talk to you guys. Hello, James.
Good morning. Bon dia.
Bon dia.
We had a lovely time chatting last time, didn't we? Because you were running a workshop for people moving and settling here in Portugal. You are, of course, also the author of this fabulous book here, which we're going to talk about on the Iberian FM section at 10 o'clock when you'll come back.
Right.
Deconstructing Brazil, Beyond Carnival, Soccer and Girls in Small Bikinis. I didn't have that stereotype. Did you, James? Maybe just a little bit. I don't know.
Maybe just a little bit.
Just
maybe just a little bit.
Yeah, I know you guys have it. Yeah, I don't know if you want to talk about the poll first, or we talk about Brazil first.
Let's do that. We'll talk about you and your book later on, because part of you being here at 10, from my point of view, is that, oh my goodness, isn't it great that we're actually talking to somebody from Brazil and are getting a Brazilian perspective on things. So that's a really important thing that you'll be doing with us at 10. But this survey, yes, I mean, perhaps the three of us could take a little bit of a look at this. Portugal Day poll shows profoundly dissatisfied country, which will come as a big shock to a lot of people who are delighted to make their home here. I'll put the link to the article in the chat so you can look at it at home. It's quite dense, but if I just read the takeaway kind of figures here, which I think is what James is going to pick up on, 91% of the country is little or not satisfied over levels of taxation. That's probably universal around the world, to be fair. 88% is little or not satisfied with the availability of housing. 79% about life in general. 78% about policies to combat crime. 76% is little or not satisfied with social mobility. 74% with the country's state health system. And it goes on. I'm not going to depress you any further with that, but it would appear that the people of Portugal, the Portuguese people, on a survey which looks like it's carried out to coincide with the celebration of Portugal Day, does not bring very good results and comes up with this headline, profoundly dissatisfied country. A shocker to me. A shocker to you, James?
Clickbait.
Okay, go on.
A couple of things happened in my education, becoming a psychotherapist. At one point, I thought I might want to go for a doctorate degree, so I started a statistics class, which I promptly stopped and decided the doctorate wasn't worth it. So statistics was too far beyond me. But I did learn something in regard to co-relationship and a few other things that are involved in statistics. I also took a course on the use of surveys in assessment of clients, that kind of thing. And a lot of it I was already aware of, but it really drew my focus into, we have to be really cautious when we approach surveys as a way to understand something, because it depends on how it was conducted, who was surveyed, who was doing the surveys, what the bias of the surveyor was, the questions that were asked, how they were asked, what choices the surveyed people had. There's so many factors that influence the result of a survey that they're, I don't want to say worthless, but they don't really provide you the kind of information that you're supposedly looking for. So, if I really wanted to, I could dedicate an effort to construct a survey that would get all negative answers, if that was my agenda. And I could say this survey was done. I don't know how many people were asked. If you ask 12 people, it's going to be a useless survey. But one of the things about testing and about surveys that I wanted to make, and this is all to me about mindfulness, this is going into something with intention to it before we have a reaction to it. What is it? How is it constructed? Who was asked? There was one question or one item in those percentages. I forgot. I saw it. And I said, well, that could mean the totally positive thing. That could mean a completely opposite thing based on what the specific item was. And I can't remember which one it was. So you want to look at now I'm forgetting, it's been so long. There are two measures of a test, which is essentially what a survey is. One has to do with whether it actually tests for what it claims to be testing for, and the other one tests for how consistently it gets the same result. And if you can't address both of those things in a way that supports your test or your survey, then it's not that meaningful. And I, again, after all of that, I don't want to take away from that there are unsatisfied people, that there are people unhappy with their experience of Portugal. And I'm assuming, but this is one of my questions, was it solely local Portuguese people who were surveyed? Were there immigrants surveyed? Were there Brazilians who immigrated surveyed? Who was surveyed in this survey to get these results?
Did you get the call? Were you, Simone? Were you called by Espresso Magazine? I mean, let's go to where it originated, which I believe is in what is this? Today's national holiday celebrating Portugal in all its forms. One of the few national holidays marked by emigre communities overseas is overshadowed by the results of an opinion poll undertaken by Lisbon University's ICS and ISCTE for Expresso and SIC, the two media channels, Expresso newspaper and SIC media channel, showing that a country is profoundly dissatisfied. It sounds like you weren't called, Simone, to take part in this.
Yeah, well, I can mention one thing. I see what James is talking about, because this is a kind of self assessment. I mean, measuring satisfaction or not is a perception. No,
yes.
So it is a perception of how life in Portugal impacts you. But I would leave a little bit of a provocation here when it comes to culture differences. I think if especially if you come from Brazil, that's what we're talking later on. But Portuguese people have the reputation, of being pessimistic, from the Brazilian perspective, But I will leave that when we talk about Brazil. Another thing I could bring in the here to the conversation is the fact that 20 to 30% of Portuguese leave Portugal because they don't think they can have a good life here.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's a big number. That's a very big number.
Well, and I've I've heard it. I haven't vetted it at all, but I've also heard that an incredibly high percentage of those Portuguese who leave plan to come back.
Yeah.
So they leave to make a living, to have a better life, and then they plan to come back and be part of their country again. So there's that side of it as well.
There is. There is. Yeah. This is very, very interesting. I mean, the Brazilians would say, "Oh, just the Portuguese being pessimistic," but I think it is. If you think about Europe as a continent, and you think about where Portugal is in terms of social conditions and so on, yes, they are not in a good place. At the same time, I mean, you talk to all the foreigners living here. they don't really have a local life in terms of their income, in terms of what they can do here, in terms of weather, where they're coming from. So there are two different perceptions. So I think
extreme, and quite polarizing on that basis. We'll bring Anna in to join us in just a moment, and stay here, Simone, because I think it's going to be a great conversation between all of us, because I'm sure Anna will have something to say about this as well. But I suppose the challenge we've got here is the extreme positions from which this survey is positioned. I think it sounds like the question was, how dissatisfied are you? It's like, well, let me just get up to this survey and take a few hits at this, rather than, are you satisfied or dissatisfied? It really seemed to be focused on the levels of dissatisfaction. So no wonder it comes out like this.
Yeah, the open-ended question would be, how do you feel being in Portugal?
Yes.
You're not going to lead them to being dissatisfied or satisfied. So that in itself sways your answers, as Jim White pointed out. So
yeah,
clearly.
and if Simone, if your observation is correct, which I'm sure it is, Simone, that there is a kind of almost habitual pessimism going on in the background, it wouldn't take much to stimulate. And we all have relatives, don't we, who we know if we ask them a certain question, we can get them going about something. And this survey sounds a bit like that. And then we compare and contrast, and this is why I'm so shocked. And I can't believe how naive I am sometimes. But this is it. Seeing that. And then, of course, most of us who are watching this will have moved here because we've seen a benefit in doing so. So there is that great sort of, and it's not a contradiction, but there is a polarity there between
relativity.
A very different sort of relativity. Let's give her a big round of applause, because I think she's about to say something about this.
Hello, everyone.
Good morning to you.
Good morning. Good morning. Having some technical difficulties, but I'm there. I know what's listening.
We would never have known. It would never have known. Great to see you this morning.
Okay,
and I think you were smiling wryly. If I can give the game away a little bit behind the scenes about this new survey, what do you make of it?
I think it's a very interesting subject, and I think it's also very interesting to have Simone pointing out the point of view of the Portuguese. I do think that we see things differently. Our lives are different here in Portugal, and we have to be honest about it. It's something I think we all see it coming. If we really want to, that there is a tension building up also between what the immigrants and the people in Portugal, because there is an economic there's a big difference in lifestyle. You can't deny that. And as Simone said, lots of people are just leaving the country, and I'm absolutely convinced every Portuguese I talk to is absolutely smitten with this country. It's not about not liking it here, or not seeing the beauty of the country, or not loving the good weather. It's just an economic reality.
Survival or income,
absolutely,
or no opportunity.
And indeed, they all plan to come back because they feel like they want to be here, but also they see the problems not being solved. And there are problems.
And that's adding insult to injury, isn't it? To live in such a beautiful place, which is the bit we're attracted to, but not be able to make satisfactory terms with it as a citizen, and as a somebody who's who has strong feelings about the politics of the country, which is, of course, the first station of blame, if you like, isn't it, for why it's not working out. That's the problem, isn't it? We're not experiencing that in quite the same way. We've come with an advantage of something.
I have in our little town, Nicole.
Yes,
like it's how much in the Portugal. I know. I know it's such a gorgeous place. Like today and last couple of days and the next coming months, it's going to be packed with people coming here, enjoying this gorgeous place. But I know people here in this small town that have worked their whole lives in conditions as fishermen, so in conditions that are already very tough, and that now have to eat either the bread that they receive at the end of the day from the local bakeries that they haven't sold, or just cans of tuna. That's what they eat. every day.
Yeah.
Every day. And that is very much hidden, because I think there is lots of shame and lots of pride also, that people don't want to come out with that. But there's lots of people living like that just here in this gorgeous this is not the big city. This is not, you expect people to be either very rich in the middle or poor and living on the streets in Lisbon. But in a town like this, there are people living like this.
Yeah. And
yeah,
that's why it's important for us, I think, to thank you very much. I was given a coffee, hopefully soon. Look, Mrs. M's here.
good. Where's my
hello.
Louisa?
Anna will have any sugar in there, Anna, for you. Simone will have a coffee.
Sugar.
Oh,
No
coffees,
sugar,
please.
thank you. Just some milk.
What I don't want to have happen here, and I don't think we would anyway, is like, oh, these people are just moaning. This place is great. What are they moaning about? There is a real problem here, isn't there?
I wanted to say I don't. My intention absolutely is not to diminish the reality of the struggles that Portugal has. I live with 2 teachers, and anyone who doesn't know, tens of thousands, if not more, teachers have been on strike since last November, and nothing is happening. So, I see that, things that have just not been fair, the money they're making or not making, just with educators. And then you talk about the medical professionals, of people who, the whole brain drain thing with people who, they've gone to school to get these educations in medical field and can't make a living in Portugal doing it. So they leave, and then that creates a strain on the healthcare system. All these things are very, very real issues. So I don't want to diminish the survey by that it may not be reliable, but I don't know that a survey is the best way to address the issues.
Oh, no.
Maybe it'll get people talking about it and doing
just
something.
Just a way to, that's what we're doing. So
Wake
I think
it's
a good survey because we're talking about it.
And historically, Simone might have something. Yeah, for sure, Anna. Simone might have something to say on this historically, as somebody who's been connected in Portugal for a long time, one way or another. Is this? This isn't anything new either, is what we're ascertaining. It's just getting worse, I suppose.
Exactly. Well, I would say that from a perspective outside Europe, when we look at Portugal, as a matter of fact, Portugal, Spain, and Italy, and Greece. Before they joined the EU, those were countries really, really struggling. So that they were not places that we would go to, or we would think that it's a place better than what we had in Brazil. From the Brazilian perspective, and that has changed a lot because of the good times of the EU investments. So they got all the money to invest and so on, and that has worked better and worse for different countries in the south of Europe. I lived in Italy for many years, and if you compare what they did with all the European money in Italy, is much more than what they have done in Portugal in terms of the developments of the cities, transport, and everything else. So yes, I think from the perspective of Brazil, we inherited the Portuguese bad public management, and that's a bit in the culture now. How the public systems make decisions, all the style of the very slow pace of change and so on. I live just 3 minutes from São Martinho do Porto, close to you guys, and from my village there, they have been planning this bicycle road for how many years? So things happen in the public system very, very slow, and that we see that now. We have inherited that in our culture. I don't know how. What is your ideas of Portugal if you come from different parts of Europe? I lived many years in Sweden also. The Swedes coming to the south of Europe, they say, "Oh, are we not in Africa?" So this is the kind of
Well,
reactions people have depending on where you come from, and all the bad structure of the Portuguese cities that some people find, oh, that's so attractive. This looks so picturesque, but from other perspective, oh, this is. I mean, why they haven't done their job yet? You know. So it really
yeah.
depends. It's a perception. We're talking about people's perception.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Thank you,
I
Simone,
agree.
for that. And you did ask a good question of this. This is quite a good panel, I think, in a way of it's sort of representative of different views from around the world of our life here in Portugal. And if I can take your question and add one to it for a comment from each of you, what is it like to be a foreigner here? How are we seeing this in comparison to how this dismal survey has portrayed things from the Portuguese point of view? But also, what are we going to do about it? Because you're right. I think Anna, you said this, didn't you? There is a. I mean, thank God for the goodness and kindness of Portuguese people in relation to seeing us coming here, telling them how. In the scenario you've given, how about us saying we love your country so much, and they're eating leftover bread from the bakery and a tin of fish to get by. I mean, it takes a big-hearted person, doesn't it, to say welcome to my country when their conditions are like that, and they see how some of us might be living here. So how are we going to manage that? How are we going to manage that? James, back to you for some observations on that.
Well, given my sort of fundamental approach to life, I go back to that I don't control anything outside of myself. So then the question becomes what actions, again, choosing that, oh yes, if I make the choice, I want to do something to help, then putting that into action, the question becomes, what is it I can do to influence people to make a positive change? And immediately Communities Unite came to mind. I'm familiar with their work and what they're doing. Everything that organization makes is used to support Portuguese organizations, Portuguese efforts to improve their part of the world or their organizations or whatever they're doing to make things better. So that's one way for sure that people can do that, but it requires being aware. So that's the notice. Then making a choice. Is this something I want to be involved with? And if so, then what actions can I take? So that again and again and again, that comes around. For me, it's mostly, to be honest, I'm still settling in. I don't feel like I still have 2 feet solidly on the ground. At some point, I want to start doing things outside of my work and outside of this weekly program where I'm hopefully helping at some level to do more, to contribute something that I can to the community to make things better. On a sense of relativity, it really is. I mean, coming from a position of privilege, and as Anna said, having financial privilege there too, even those of us who may not have millions of dollars to work with, we're still far better off economically than most of the Portuguese. So to us, we'll complain about the slowness or the complexity or confusion of the bureaucracy, but we're thrilled with the cost of living. We love the food. We love the ability to travel, all the things we can do to take advantage of our position. So to us, it can be, if you're not being mindful, looking at the Portuguese, you can say, oh, they're just a bunch of whiners. But I live with 2 Portuguese who are legitimately struggling and they're teachers. They're not, fishermen. And I don't want to diminish fishermen either. I'm just saying they're not in the position that Anna describes, but they're struggling. They're struggling. Yeah. They're trained, educated professionals who are struggling financially in their own country. And as you said, loving it. They love their country. So, what I can do is going to require me to ask the question, how can I help?
Very good. And Jim, picking up on that regarding actions, James, where, choice, and what actions, and a question, where am I needed and how can I serve? So we can have that in the back of our mind. One quick thing we can do is stop saying how cheap it is here, right? Somebody was saying that to me the other day. Stop it. Just stop rubbing people's faces in it by saying how cheap it is here. Good for you. If the relative lifestyle you can enjoy here is better than the one you came from. But let's move away from
quality of life
like
is a much better way of talking
and
about
stop wanting everything to be for free. I had,
Go on,
yeah,
please,
sorry.
please pick up on that, and like you know, within the spirit of what can we do? Because of course you're doing something very positive. You're bringing together in a way that communities unite are doing. You're doing your Portuguese immersion experience.
Yeah, it's what James says. It's small steps. It's trying to, you know, you can't change the world. Start with yourself or something like that, and do small steps. But I do think that there's lots of things we can do. I'm full of ideas, and I think the important nuance that we have to make is we have to really be part of the. And it's a difficult exercise. How can we not fall into the trap of charity? Because there's lots of initiatives here, which are great. I'm not. It's great that we have like charity dinners where you can go, eat your belly full, and then the money goes to that or that organization. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but it keeps the distance very. I mean, it's the rich people taking care of the poor people, and that's just a horrible thing. I mean, it's not a horrible thing that we're doing it, but it's not sustainable. That's not a solution. Yeah. So I think the initiatives that we've talked about. One of my things that I've launched already had a second edition this last week. The Portuguese immersion experience, and I'm selling it as a way for the immigrants, expats, foreigners, to integrate better, to learn the language, to have some contact with Portuguese people. But I'm also helping these restaurant owners have a decent income with that. Yeah, so they're earning money. And for example, just to give you an example, I had the first edition, I think, I had a lady, very nice lady. She wasn't, she didn't realize how hurtful that must be to read it as a Portuguese on Facebook. Had a question. I'm just assuming that this is a free event and that we just bring our ingredients and that we don't have to pay for it. And I very politely answered, but I really tried to find the right words because that is really hurtful, because those people, they organize this on their only day off, the restaurant owners. So they have only one day off. They have a son who is about 10 years old. They only have one day off a week. They, like every Portuguese, work very, very hard to get everything together. So they're sacrificing their one day off in hopes to do something special, do an extra. They do some show cooking. They have, it's like the whole event is like so greatly organized, but there's lots of work before and during that day. And someone just asks if it can't be for free. And that is just wrong.
We want to discourage
it's
that,
just
don't
wrong.
we? That's the thing that's the worst kind of expat thing, isn't it? This colonial idea that another country and its people
because it's cheap
for
here,
your
so
benefit.
everything should be because I want to. Oh yes, so I want to learn the language, so I don't have to pay for it, right? No, it's an event. It's a complete event. You get all the attention of the Portuguese people that are there. We invite guests. Of course, we don't make them pay. They're guests. They are there. They are willing to spend the whole night with complete strangers, speaking bad Portuguese or basic Portuguese to enable you to start communicating. Breaking the language barrier, learning something about the culture. We had last time we had some music playing. It's an event. There's lots of work behind it, and it should be paid for properly. There is,
Yes, well
and
said.
I think that is something that that we have to, let go. Yes, it is. Some things are, other things are not cheaper. It's very strange in this country how gas and electricity, in Belgium, that would be the basic needs, and they are just as expensive as in Belgium. So that's something, but that's something we can't change. That's the government. It's up to the government to make sure that people. But maybe there need to be more initiatives where we make the Portuguese earn money, actual money from the foreigners, that are willing to pay for quality, because that's it, right? You don't, of course, you don't want to say let's make everything just more expensive, and that would be, and it's not wouldn't be the solution, I think.
No, the
But it would be
distinction I'm
good to
hearing
have
from what
more
you're
initiatives.
saying. Yes, and a partnership rather than patronage, because it is patronizing.
Indeed, that's what I mean.
I mean, and I think you chose your words and kind of positioned very carefully that, you know, it's not, charity isn't a bad thing, but if it's not, doesn't change the system, if it's sort of patronizing and it's patronage, then great, that helps people eat for a day, but it doesn't teach them how to fish, blah, blah, blah. Again, that sounds very condescending and patronizing, but I think I know.
Yeah, but you go to those charity dinners, there's not one Portuguese, and that is a pity.
Yes, I have noticed this. Yes, it
That's
is
a
indeed,
pity.
absolutely right.
There's not
The check
one
will be delivered.
Portuguese.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, the check will be delivered later on to those recipients.
Yeah, there is no
What a
contact.
good
There
point.
is no there is nothing. If I ever find an investor, I have an idea. We could make. I have more than one idea, but I would need investors to do that. But I think there are concepts that we can work out where where we can make sure that people have work, decent wages, and that the immigrants, expats, foreigners don't have to pay like 3 times the normal price to have a great evening, but with like the joint effort between Portuguese and foreigners.
Well, and that is one
Please.
thing that Communities Unite does is that it's I think exclusively an immigrant population that runs it, but they hire Portuguese businesses to provide the food and provide the venue and to provide the music, and they pay them. They pay those people for the provision of their services, and they are making an effort to integrate more and more, to get more and more Portuguese actually involved in the social part of the event as well, to mingle with immigrants. So that's all part of their function.
It's going to be very important. It's important now. It will be very important in the future because there's more of us coming.
Yes, and I did want to say on a very personal level, because I talk about what I can do.
That's so true.
Sorry, I didn't mean to be talking over people. When we talk about what I have control over, like I don't control anything else, some of my more mindful choices are along the line of what Anna's been saying. I seek out Portuguese businesses when I need things, Portuguese products, Portuguese services. I seek out, when I'm looking for referrals, I'm specifically asking for Portuguese people who provide those services. And then I'm taking the approach of Portuguese prices plus a little, because if everyone goes in and just drives up the prices by throwing money in it, then the Portuguese people are not going to be able to afford it. But I'm willing to pay more. So I hired a Portuguese accountant who's being paid minimum wage by the agency she works for. And I'm paying her less than I would pay someone in the United States, but significantly more than she would make at this agency. Far more than minimum wage, because she's taken the initiative to try and carve a niche into helping immigrants with their Portuguese taxes. So that's one way that I can just very personally do it and then share what I'm doing, and then refer these people out to other people who are looking for accountants, looking for barbers, looking for whatever. So on a larger scale, that could be pretty significant. On my single scale, how much difference is it making in the country of Portugal? Like nada.
It all helps, though, doesn't it? And that's some great serving suggestions this morning. We'll come to you, Simone, for a few words on this as well. It is a different world for Anna, says Pete. I haven't been to a single charity event where I'm not outnumbered 50-1 by Portuguese people. I suppose it typifies expat enclaves. We resent that, don't we, Anna, that we live in an expat enclave? This is, I think, good point, Pete. I mean, of course, when you go deep into the countryside, you're going to be in a lot of local associations where you are outnumbered. And good for you.
But those are organized by the Portuguese. Yeah, I'm talking about initiatives coming from the foreigners. Yeah, I'm talking about the charity events that are organized by foreigners. There are no. It's like almost. I don't want to say it, but I'm going to say it anyway. Don't hate me. Like it's paying off your guilt. Like we know it's a bit. You know, you have to be careful that you're not. Yeah. So I don't think it's indeed. I'm sure that there are many. I know that there are many initiatives coming from the Portuguese to help the Portuguese, because that's just the way the Portuguese work. Also, they are like they do. It would be completely different in Belgium, for example. That's a cultural thing. They do help each other, try to find solutions. I know that people, you know, if they're hungry, they will be fed. People will help them. So that's not the question. The question is when there are initiatives coming from the foreigners, that we have to be careful not to step into the trap of doing pure charity, because I don't think that is a long-term solution, and I think it brings about the wrong message. So when initiatives come from foreigners, they should try to be indeed that outside the enclave, inside the community.
Yes,
we have to talk to the Portuguese about ideas. Yeah, we have to talk. We have to have conversation with Portuguese people, businesses, etc., about their country. We have to be in that conversation. That's exactly what I meant.
And where Pete is as well, I think there's a lot of offers from the foreigners who want to teach permaculture to the Portuguese. Pete, right? Let's go to. We're going to conclude soon on this section, and I'm sure it's a subject we'll return to. Thank you, James. Thank you, Anna. We've not heard from you for a little while, Simone. What do you make of this? As we're rounding up this particular.
Yes, I think both James. Thinking that you should buy local, you should make sure you spend your money with local business and so on. That's one way of helping. And I also like Anna's ideas of making people more integrated to the community. Of course, if you can speak Portuguese, that's difficult. But if we are immigrants, if we're staying here for a longer time, of course, learning the Portuguese so you can talk to real Portuguese people on a daily basis. This is how you're going to get to know what's happening in Portugal, because living in these bubbles and not knowing what's on the news in Portugal would not make you aware of what is needed. And I liked also some of the comments that say, I mean, why don't we help the Portuguese charities instead, creating our own and so on. So yes, I think we all this discussion is in the right direction, and we of course do what we can on a daily basis to help this process.
Brilliant. All right. Let's just conclude with a few comments then from our audience this morning. I think this was referring to the Scandinavian assessment of Portugal. Ouch, that was harsh. And a pushback from Mr. S. I've been to Stockholm, says Mr. S, various times. And I'm yet to see the bridge that connects the city to the island. I'll take that, Stockholm. Ages and still under construction there. So, yeah, I mean, we can't get too carried away, I think, on singular comments and observations and opinions, but there's some very good general and some really good serving suggestions here this morning. What we forgot earlier, and what we'll finish with, is a few dad jokes as well to sweeten and lighten the mood. And also Coach Turners, if you'll permit me, everybody. Bon dia Gumpers, we've made it to another week, so congratulations. Great weekend at Silverstone with mixed results, but great fun. Lots of lovely cars and people. Picked up a good tan. Well done, Coach Turner, with a God Squad tip of the day then for everybody, and a few dad jokes from T-Duck. The trouble with having a great time is it tends to involve eating and drinking too much. Yes, that resonates as well, doesn't it, with the foreigner expat immigrant experience in Portugal? Certainly did in my case. 2 to 3 kilos over a weekend. So I thought it might be useful to report on how I try to achieve that. First step is to cut out breakfast again. That's a terrible idea. We found a fantastic bikers cafe on the A5 called the Super Sausage Cafe. Are you sure that's a cafe? Sounds like it could be something else. Great place, a good but unhealthy food. So no eating for me this morning. Let's see if that helps. And T-Duck saying, I'm currently on medication, so don't allow me to skip breakfast. So some days I just have a fresh fruit and maybe a small bowl of plain oatmeal. Well done, you Gumpers. Thinking about your health here and more serving suggestions there, lifestyle-wise. Cherries are plentiful this time of year. Now, where did those dad jokes go? Here they are. Everybody, we'll come back to the serious conversation on another occasion. But for today, why don't monsters eat ghosts? Because they taste like shit. That's okay, not to brag. But I can still fit into the same hat I wore to high school. There you go. He hasn't bloated up. And do you remember the chiropractor joke I posted? It was about a week back. Very good. And a bit of trivia based on the Ensemble Iberica. Thank you, Antonio. Thank you for all your other comments this morning. Iberia is the name given by the ancient Greeks to the region now known as the Iberian Peninsula. However, Iberia was also the name of an ancient kingdom that is now known as Georgia. Oh, the plot thickens there. Anna, thank you so much. If you could get the link to your Portugal immersion experience to me in the private chat, I'll make sure everybody's got that before we finish today. James, see you next Monday. Thank you very much for your mindful migration. And that video of Nuno as well. Oh, my goodness. And Simone, stick around. Don't go anywhere because we're going to be talking about your book in just a moment, which is Deconstructing Brazil, Beyond Carnival, Soccer, and Girls in Small Bikinis. Looking forward to talking to you about this in just a moment. Yes, so cheers, Anna. Cheers, James. And stick around, Simone.
Ciao, ciao.
Bye for now. Well, Simone, thank you for being here. What a fascinating name for a book. And thank you for joining us earlier than planned.
That's not a problem.
Yeah, thank you so much. And some great insights from you from this particular point of view as a Brazilian now living in Portugal, and also the author of Deconstructing Brazil, Beyond Carnival, Soccer, and Girls in Small Bikinis. So before we come back to your particular life experience as a Brazilian person living in Portugal, this book might have something to do with that whole Portuguese-Brazilian connection and how Brazilians are perceived around the world. Could you tell us about the book?
Yes, I'd love to. It has been like a long journey for me. Portugal is my sixth country.
Wow.
So I have lived in many other places. But my experience as a Brazilian abroad has always been full of stereotypes that I have to meet.
Yes.
I have to say, especially as a Brazilian woman. So I had this reaction to my experience and people's stereotypes all my life, basically.
Yeah.
And I was so fed up with that. I was so tired of these misconceptions and so on. So that was my reaction. The book was my reaction to the following. Okay, I know we are known by Carnival, soccer, and girls in small bikinis, but what is there more? What is there more about us that I would like to tell people? So that was a question that stayed with me for many years. And for a period, I moved back to Brazil, and I was doing intercultural training. I was helping foreigners coming to Brazil, trying to adapt and trying to understand our culture. So that kind of pushed me to how am I going to explain our behavior to foreigners? And that I was kind of pushed more into doing a proper research. So it was very challenging to go back to the history books. I'm not a historian, and try to explain or justify some of our behaviors. So that was my journey, Carl. It's very interesting.
Justifying behavior. That's fantastic. It is available on Amazon and no doubt elsewhere too. But just to give everyone a reference point, because we know some people talking of buying from Portuguese businesses. I'm not sure. I don't know if there is a Portuguese bookshop that would sell this book, but here it is on Amazon anyway, and we'll give the link to it. There it is, Deconstructing Brazil, Beyond Carnival, Soccer and Girls in Small Bikinis. Very reasonably priced paperback, and I'll put the link to it. So yes, explaining behavior, as you put it, of the Brazilians. I mean, this is a problem, isn't it, for all cultures, really, how we are portrayed overseas. But you're so right. I mean, those three things that you've chosen there do seem to be universal flavors about how people perceive Brazil. And then in perhaps the last 5 years, also the political temperature of Brazil is also an exportable stereotype, isn't it? With Bolsonaro being likened as the Trump of Brazil and so on. So why don't you, a bit like with the survey earlier on, you know, how dismal that was. Can we talk a little bit more about what else there is to Brazil that people should know about beyond these stereotypes?
Yeah, so I think I would choose to talk a little bit about the relationship between Brazil and Portugal, because we are in Portugal, right?
Yeah, yes,
and that's where everything starts. Or well, that's not where everything starts, because people think about Brazil. Okay, I would choose to talk about two perspectives about Brazil. One is a very Eurocentric perspective. I mean, if you stand in Europe and you look down to Brazil, you probably have a sense that Brazil is a continuation of Portugal because of the colonial relationship. So I want to question that a little bit. And the other perspective is like if you look down to Brazil from an American perspective, you see Brazilians as just another Latino. Right. So these two ideas of Brazil has also kind of bothered me for so long, but I didn't know why. So I had to think a little bit deeper. So let's think about Brazil being as an extension of Portugal. You know, Portugal has been in Brazil for 500 years. But wait a second, wasn't there anything in Brazil before the Portuguese came? Yes, there was. I mean, we have a history of 12,000 years. And suddenly, because the Portuguese arrived, we are Portuguese. Yeah. And another aspect is that the Portuguese, they were a very unique colonizers in a sense that they, when they came to these colonies, they have the idea of mixing with locals in a different way from the English, for instance. Yes. So all this mixing with the native indigenous people were intense. You know, from the Brazilian perspective, the Portuguese coming with these boats to Brazil, just guys, first of all, just men, and for a long time there was an intense mix between the Portuguese and the indigenous women. We have to say that we don't like to talk about this because that sounds a little bit not politically correct. And also the intense influx of Africans that the Portuguese brought to Brazil. And just to give you a comparison, there are 9 times more Africans in Brazil than in the US that were brought from Africa. And there is
Wow.
9,000 more Africans coming to the US than in the whole Spanish-speaking Latin America. So we have had the most intense African forced migration to Brazil, and that was thanks to the Portuguese. Then thanks to the Portuguese way of handling business, because we're talking about slave trade.
Right.
That is a serious, heavy thing that people in Portugal don't like to talk so much about
Sure.
it, and we don't see it in the conversation. You don't hear so much about it, but I think that is one of the main differences. And we have this incredible mix now for 200 years before the Portuguese found gold in Brazil. I mean, why did they go to Brazil? So let me tell you a story that when the Portuguese came to Brazil, like the Spanish people, they thought they would find gold right away, but the Spanish did. They found gold much earlier than the Portuguese, but it took a while in Brazil. So they found an ink that comes from a tree, and the tree is called Brazil. This is why our name is
Really?
Brazil. Yeah, yeah. So the Portuguese found that this ink was very valuable for dyeing clothes and things in the old times here in Europe. So
Yeah.
that was the first economic activity of the Portuguese in Brazil, was actually coming from the Brazil tree. Anyway, but from the ink from the tree called Brazil to the sugarcane, and then to the cacao, and all these activities, they were very much monocultures.
Yes.
It means that you need land, you need people working for you, but it creates a huge social distance between a landowner and everybody else that works for you.
Of
So I
course.
mean, this triangle, the social triangle, where there's a huge amount of former slaves, indigenous people, in the bottom of this society, and just a few landowners have been being printed in our society. And yes, that was the implementation of the Portuguese colony system. So there is a bit of a kind of a historical love and hate between the Brazilians and Portuguese.
Thank you for that. Antonio F is commenting here. Brazil was part of the Portuguese Empire for just 315 years. And I think he's using the word just in relation to what you were saying before. It's a funny thing, isn't it, when a country gets discovered, like it wasn't there before until it got discovered by the people who found it. But within the thousands of years of of Brazilian civilization, Portugal had it within its empire for 315 years. And Brazil has been an independent country for 208 years now. So the interesting thing here, of course, is that more often than not independent, but remembered massively for being a Portuguese community. And such was, I suppose, and I use the word advisedly, but such is the violence of colonialism, isn't it? That it makes such an impact, because it is about conquest and resources and money and what happens to people in the pursuit of those things. And that is why I guess it's so memorable and so difficult, and such an interesting subject as well, as we're talking about this morning. So thank you for that bit of context there. And
Yeah.
that's the Portuguese view relationship with Brazil. You're also talking about the within the Americas. There's another perception there. Did you want to expand on that as well?
Well, from the American perspective, the Latinos, the idea of Latinos are really the Spanish-speaking Latinos. When a Brazilian lives in the US, I have lived in the US too, you kind of don't fit, or there's something different about the Brazilians. I don't mean better or worse. It's just something different, that we don't see ourselves as Latinos. And it has to do with the historical distance between the Portuguese speaking and the Spanish speaking. So there has been distance in the interchange about from the Portuguese to the Spanish speaking. Many reasons that I explained in the book, but there is a difference. There is a distance, and the identity of Latino, it kind of doesn't. We don't feel it suits us if I talk to other Brazilians, but it's just perceptions that we don't feel included there. Funnily,
That is interesting. But language, of course, is so profoundly important to people, isn't it? Because language is a reflection of how we see the world. You know,
yes, basically it's the language. But if you think about a colony and the colonizer relationship, you have the influx of the communication between Brazil and Portugal.
yeah,
That is one exchange of everything,
yes.
and another flux is between the Spanish speaking and Spain. So there was no reason why the Portuguese speaking would talk to an Spanish speaking at that
Right.
time in history. This is why there was a big cultural difference, except not only the language, but also this how the societies have been formed in Latin America in relation to the colonizers.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Mm.
And is there an indigenous Brazilian language that is still spoken in any meaningful way?
Oh, that's such a beautiful question, Carl. I love to answer that because this is what I bring in my book. Is because there is still in Brazil. I don't know exactly the number, but it's like I don't know, more than 100 other languages is spoken in a small in indigenous ethnic groups in Brazil. So I spend one chapter in my book just explaining how invisible the indigenous people have become in Brazil, just because how they were integrated into the society. But yes, they have a huge influence. I mean, I have a mix of all blood in
Sure.
myself. I mean, the indigenous, the African, and most people have. But people don't like to talk about. They like to say, "Oh no, my family comes from Italy or Germany or even Portugal." But I have nothing to do with indigenous Brazilians.
It's so fascinating, isn't it? I know. I mean, I have some Far Eastern DNA as well, and it's the same there. This kind of the prize of being European has become such a theme, isn't it? In the last, well, I suppose since the Industrial Revolution and since what has become Europe, what is culturally Europe, and how people aspire to that is so fascinating, and what we've lost through that occurring as well. And this is, I mean, it's no wonder you wanted to write the book that you wrote, because these shorthands of language and communication, like Brazil or Brazilian, says so much and leaves out so much at the same time as well, doesn't it? We have to communicate like this, don't we, to really find out what's going on in life and with ourselves and with each other, because these shorthands, one little word to sum up millions of people and hundreds of years of culture is just such a shortcoming. So yes, please carry on, because I want to move towards the connection, what it's like to be a Brazilian here in Portugal now, if I may, because that's a really important part of what we're trying to do with Good Morning Portugal and a project we've got called the Portugal Immigrant Network, to have a greater representation. Our community here doesn't represent very well the diversity of people coming to live in Portugal. And we are in this most fascinating time in Portuguese history, aren't we? Where thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people are coming from different cultures to be in Portugal, into that landscape we talked about before, where the Portuguese people are profoundly dissatisfied with how their society is being run and their levels of satisfaction. We're coming in, and I think it's vitally important that we understand each other's cultures and that we talk. And so can you do that for us from this Brazilian point of view of what it's like to be Brazilian in Portugal at the moment?
Oh well, let's start with some numbers here. I think they are the 30% of foreigners in Portugal are Brazilians,
Wow.
and that's a big number.
Sure.
Of course, yeah, of course, most of us don't feel that we belong to any expat community, except
Right.
me or a few people I know that have lived abroad. But because it is a really a immigration, and we have about the same amount of Portuguese living in Brazil that we have of Brazilians living in Portugal. And the reasons why Brazilians have moved to Portugal, of course, varies a lot. But as you mentioned, the political uh, situation in Brazil the last few years, I mean, that has shaken again Brazil, and many of us have chosen to leave. But there is also an idea that between Brazilians and Portuguese is, as I said, there is this uh, historical heavy feeling. There's
Mm.
even a word called lusophobia. Have you heard
Yes.
about that?
Yes. Well, I haven't, but I can immediately understand what
Yes.
it's getting at. Yes.
Yeah, so I think we need a new time of understanding each other at the moment. We should
Yeah,
a
we do.
bit leave behind what has happened to us. And Brazilians living in Portugal, they do have a hard time in Portugal because the Portuguese see us not as an expat. They see us as just from the colony of Brazil, maybe, I don't know.
No, I
But the
understand that. Yeah.
yeah, so we don't get this attention as you guys do, in a sense. If I start speaking Portuguese now, after two words, if I say bom dia, in my way of saying bom dia, that's it, they know I'm from Brazil, and the whole interaction is different. But I must say, I am so happily surprised with the experience I have in Portugal. I think especially the younger generation of Portuguese are so kind and friendly, and I never felt anything but welcome,
Oh, that's
really.
wonderful to hear.
Yeah,
Yeah.
of course, the older generation, they're a little bit hard in a
It's
sense,
the
but I
same in
think
the
it's
UK.
normal.
It's the same in the UK, and I do understand this distinction you've made, which is a fascinating one for us other expat foreigner immigrants to understand. For Brazilian people coming to Portugal, it's not the same as being an expat American, is it, or Brit? This is part of the colonial past and the long-standing relationship between the countries, and it's not unlike when people were welcomed or not into the UK. From the former colonies in the 60s and 70s, that was a very challenging time in some ways for the United Kingdom, and certainly the people from India, the West Indies, were not, and the Far East were not seen as immigrant or expat people coming in to make a new fame and fortune for themselves, although some did. It was very much much more of a political and social move, wasn't it, rather than a financial or entrepreneurial move, you could say. So that's a very interesting parallel from a UK point of view, and something that clearly needs to be managed sensitively and sympathetically with as you say, I think the biggest group of people moving to Portugal from outside of Portugal are Brazilian people. That representation, that community, are there clear paths for representation and how the relationship is managed, handled, balanced? Are there associations? Are there organizations that look into that and help people integrate successfully?
I know of a few in Lisbon, Carl, but I think in general, Brazilians are not very good at organizing ourselves, especially abroad.
Right.
It is a cultural thing that I'm mentioning here. And where does that come from? It comes from the fact that Brazil is a very complex society, and we have so
Yeah.
many social levels. Is not only rich and poor. There are many, many, many levels in terms of social economic structure on one side, and then
Yes.
there are also quite many regional difference. So we have a vertical
Yeah.
complexity, and we have a horizontal complex in terms of the various regions in Brazil, because we're talking about a huge country here. So that complexity, if you think about people moving from Brazil abroad, they bring that with
Of
them.
course they do. Of
So
course
it's
they do.
very, yeah, it's very difficult to unite Brazilians, because just by looking at each other, just by listening to our Portuguese, we kind of know in this matrix of complexity where
Incredible.
people might fit. So
Yeah.
can you imagine having this because it's not at all homogeneous. So
Yeah,
how do
right.
you unify a group that's not homogeneous from the beginning? So that's a big challenge. So
You're right.
I don't find, especially here in Silver Coast, any association of Brazilians that really work. I have myself tried a little bit, but we are dispersed. We try to mingle and become half Portuguese. And someone said to me, "Oh, Portugal is just a state of Brazil." That was very funny, I thought, because I
Yeah.
mean we try to handle the language difference also in a way that we want to blend in, but of course we don't. I mean, if you come from the UK and go to the States, you don't change your English. You just go about your life with the English you have. And then
That's right.
Brazilians sometimes they want to kind of change their Portuguese to fit into the Portuguese society better and so on. It's an attempt to integrate, but it is a very complex. And so Brazil is not a melting pot in terms of culture as people think. It's a
Interesting.
it's a very hard to mix society.
Wow. Pete is saying it's an amazing statement of identity. Brazil is one of the most ethnically diverse populations in the world. And that reflects and echoes what you're saying there, doesn't it? For me, we all originated from 200 plus people that survived the Ice Age. That's an interesting point of view there, Pete. And a really interesting comment for going back into the history of Brazil and Portugal. Rio de Janeiro in Brazil was the capital of the Portuguese Empire for several years during the. Yeah, that's because the king was not a great leader, right? Just said, okay, well, we're going to go and base ourselves in Brazil now. We've got a nice place over there. That was a little bit of cowardly leadership, I think, wasn't it? Pete,
Yeah.
colonialism on the whole was initiated when traders called in the military to protect their interests. For example, Africa went from 5% colonized in 1890 and 5 years later 90%. Isn't that incredible? And like I said before, the violence of that sudden change and what that means for people is quite extraordinary. Thank you. Pete also saying, I love the fact that Rio is the capital of Portugal. I could never imagine that with the British Empire. Yes, we're off to Hong Kong because we don't like what's going on at the moment or wherever. Thank you for your kind words, T-Duck. Excellent show today. Open my eyes. I've learned a lot. Thank you very much. Ditto, says Sue's. Excellent topics covered today. Learning curve starting to bend a bit. Now, as we conclude here, and I so often is the case that we have such wonderful conversations here on Good Morning Portugal with such brilliant guests like yourself. I need to give you a key to the studio, Simone, so that you come back on a more regular basis and we can continue
I
this.
would love to.
Thank you. Consider yourself part of the team. We do have a page over on our Good Morning Portugal website where we basically got the Portugal Immigrant Network, and Brazil, you might be pleased to see, is the first little profile we've done. Now, I'm not the right person to be writing this and grabbing information from around the internet. We'd love you to be, if in any way, or put forward somebody who wants to be like our Brazilian representative within our community, Simone. So I don't want to put you on the spot, but if we could think about that, about how we can have representation from the Brazilian community as diverse. And with all that you said about it, not all Brazilians are the same. Like not any race is the same. You've got that. And that's where you come back to the stereotypes, interestingly, isn't it? It's like, so let's organize a Portuguese awareness show. What should we talk about? How about football and girls in small bikinis? It all comes back to the stereotypes again, doesn't it? As reference points. And capoeira. and music.
Yes.
And, you know, so we have that uncomfortable balance to make, don't we, of like picking some of the cultural icons and stereotypes, but then as soon as we've referenced ourselves, maybe broadening out like you've done so beautifully today for us, and with your wonderful book. João de Norte and Bairandi, people coming in with comments again as we continue. As we conclude, 200 people that survived the Ice Age were geographically dispersed all over the globe, not ethnically in a single place. João de Norte and Pete, they're discussing that idea. Apparently, European Portuguese is changing more and more to Brazilian Portuguese. Bairandi says, I've noticed the local Brazilians here tend to speak Brazilian Portuguese to the local Portuguese, but the Venezuelans try to speak European Portuguese. Well, there's another show for us to do. And the single continent of Pangaea was much longer before the Ice Age. Okay, well, there's another show. And I love the way, says Bairandi here, I love the way they try to keep their own identity. And that, I suppose, as a final note, Simone, is the art form here, isn't it? Is in preserving the identity that you bring with you, that you're proud of, whilst fitting in and contributing to the country you've come to. And that, of course, is such a beautiful dance. I mean, I'll use that stereotype if I may. That's a dance, isn't it? Certainly between the Portuguese and the Brazilians. So final words to you then, if I may, how you see the future of this integration and continuation of the Portuguese-Brazilian relationship. What do you hope for?
Yeah, I hope for us to learn really more about ourselves beyond these stereotypes. Brazilians have a bit of a also very limited idea of the Portuguese. Now, the Portuguese who open a bakery, that's the idea in Brazil. And Portuguese, they also have their ideas. But anyway, I hope for the future that we are better educated about each other, and there's more respect. There's more a sense that we can contribute to each other's future here, because we need each other.
Absolutely. Oh, that's so beautiful. Thank you so much for being here. You can get Simone's book on Amazon, Deconstructing Brazil Beyond Carnival, Soccer and Girls in Small Bikinis. Looking forward already to talking to you again soon, Simone. Have a great day and a great week. Ciao, ciao. Bye for now. And goodbye, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow.